Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Zippo, and I am the President and CEO of the Center for Nonprofits. It is my honor to welcome you to today's web briefing, COVID-19 and Government Assistance for New Jersey Nonprofits, presented by the Office of United States Senator Cory Booker in partnership with the Center for Nonprofits. We're very grateful to the Senator and to Caitlin McGinnis on his team for making today's session possible. And we also thank the representatives from the U.S. Small Business Administration and the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, who will be speaking a little later. The Center for Nonprofits is New Jersey's state association for the nonprofit community, and we are a nonprofit ourselves. Since 1982, the center has strengthened New Jersey's nonprofits individually and collectively to improve the quality of life for the people of our state. We're also part of the National Council of Nonprofits Network, the nation's largest network of nonprofits. As we all know, nonprofits are vital to a strong, thriving, and just society, providing programs and services that make New Jersey attractive to live and work, and contributing importantly to the economy. And as we've all seen lately, they are often the first, last, or only source of help for people in distress. The Center recently conducted our second rapid response survey in concert with the Council of New Jersey Grant Makers. We had 349 responses to this survey, and we just closed data collection just on Tuesday. 2 data points from this newly released survey illustrate the devastating impact that COVID-19 crisis is already having on our state's nonprofits. Of the 349 nonprofits that responded to our survey, 207, almost 60%, have already lost money due to the COVID-19 crisis, totaling more than $46 million. More than a quarter of our respondents have already laid off or furloughed staff, more than 4,200 positions lost in 88 organizations alone. Now, this survey covers only a small subset of the nonprofit community, so if you extrapolate these responses even just a little, then the impact on nonprofits and the people who need them is already staggering, and we're still just in the early stages of the crisis. We're very, very grateful for the extraordinary dedication of our government leaders who are working tirelessly to provide relief and guidance during this constantly shifting crisis. The packages that have been enacted by Congress have been significant and extremely helpful, but we all know that more is needed. When nonprofit missions are endangered, that affects all of us. And that's why nonprofits are asking Congress to enact a dedicated nonprofit track as part of the next relief package, to include things like a dedicated funding in the Small Business Administration Paycheck Protection Program and other loan programs, a more robust charitable giving tax incentive, additional reimbursement for unemployment claims, and increased funding for targeted state formula grants and programs. We are very fortunate in New Jersey that we have a staunch champion in United States Senator Cory Booker, who has advocated tirelessly in Washington for nonprofits and the communities we serve. And it is my honor to introduce Senator Cory Booker.
Thank you very much. And I'm really sorry that we're convening today under the circumstances that we're all in, that our state is in, and that our nation is in, not to mention the world. This is really a tragic and difficult time, and we are in a period where things will get worse still before they get better. But I know that during good times or bad, economic recession or economic boom periods, the reality is all across New Jersey, there are still often so many people in need. And the folks on this phone are heroes in every type of circumstance and situation. And it is this community that I relied on in my entire professional life, from the time I was a local elected leader in Newark to my time as mayor of the largest city in our state, to my time as a senator. I have just seen heroic work being done in every area, from the arts to environmental preservation. It is a nonprofit that in so many ways are the connective tissue of our body politic and ensure that our nation lives up to its promise and its hope for people that are too often marginalized or lack opportunity or equality or even just basic ideals of what a just nation is all about. I live with a sense of urgency in the Senate on normal times to try to address a lot of these issues and empower the people that are doing the things every single day. But here we find ourselves now in very difficult days, and it is staggering what is going on. And I hear every day, virtually every hour, just stories of what a lot of our nonprofit leaders are doing, how they're going way, way above and beyond in this crisis to try to help, to try to sustain, to try to ensure that we as a collective and individuals are able to overcome these challenges. Yesterday, I was on a call with leaders in the domestic violence community, the Coalition to End Domestic Violence here in New Jersey, and I heard from advocates that were doing incredible things like staying at their shelters themselves, moving in, working 24 hours a day in order to continue to help survivors and not risk spreading the virus to their families. Organizations I know well, like Elijah's Promise in New Brunswick, is serving almost double the amount of people they normally do without the assistance of volunteers. This is stories that are not making our paper. I know and celebrate those frontline workers in the medical profession and others, but I know the folks on this phone may never even get a bit of spotlight, but the work you're doing often is the difference of a family making it or not, having food or not, and able to, in many ways, to endure what's going to be a very rough period, as I said. And so I want to thank you and let you know that in the United States Senate, Senator Bob Menendez and I really dug in on this bill, joined with a lot of our colleagues in the first round, and really just blocked a bill that did not have a lot of the things in it that we're going to talk about now. It is an imperfect bill, but we were able to win a lot of very solid things at the beginning. And Linda was 100% correct. This is a beginning, and we're hoping, in fact, we're in negotiations right now on another round for some of the small business funding to make sure that we correct for some of the inadequacies in this bill as a stopgap, hopefully, or more help until we can get another package, larger package done, which is what we're hoping to see. And so this $2 trillion package will hopefully go a long way for a lot of people. It will hopefully give some folks that bridge. But the nonprofits on this call, as was said by Linda, are just facing a sharp decrease in donations and volunteer hours. And many of the fundraisers that you all have, the dinners or galas and other efforts you rely on to keep your operations going, and many of you had to cancel or in many ways change those events, which is making the very time that you're all getting greater demand, you have less resources with which to meet those demands. And as was said by Linda, many of you have already had to furlough staff or lay off staff. And so I know some of the organizations that are listening to my voice right now are at high points of fear and anxiety because you feel like your organization might indeed be on the brink of survival. And I just want you to know that I've heard from many of you. I feel that same sense of urgency in my work and trying to find ways to help you all from my official position to even just trying to talk to foundations and philanthropists around our state and nation to tell them that this is the time. This is the gravest challenge of our lives, and we all should rise to meet that challenge by trying to get more resources to a lot of the nonprofits out there. In terms of the bill specifically, is we fought for some critical funding streams. One is just the general resources we get. It's a small part of the overall bill, but there's about $53 million of community development block grant money to be allotted in 30 days to help with affordable housing, infrastructure, and other projects with some flexibility built in for the governor to try to make sure that that's used in all of our 21 counties, as well as county leaders as well. There's also $53 million in emergency solution grants for New Jersey to help people who are experiencing homelessness, and cap and the cap on funding for shelter services has also been temporarily lifted. Some of you may already know that there's been a lift on SNAP funding, which is really important for so many of our families. It'll be about $70 million more coming to the state of New Jersey. There's $12.4 million more for LIHEAP grants here, LIHEAP in New Jersey, low-income housing, energy assistance, if I have the acronym right, to help families and seniors offset, as you all know, heating and cooling and other energy costs. One of the big things that I know we're going to be talking about on this call with some great professionals is the Paycheck Protection Program for nonprofits that's available for nonprofits and small businesses with fewer than 500 employees, which really make forgivable loans available for payroll costs, mortgage interest payments, rent, and utilities. The intention and the reason why nonprofits were specifically included in that is it was hopefully going to be a bridge for those nonprofits to stay afloat. Now, to be blunt, there are a lot of challenges with the PPP program, and we're finding that there are challenges right now partnering nonprofits, faith-based institutions with actual lenders that will service them with this program. And there's a lot of challenges with the program being worried that the program might be oversubscribed. And so I just want to know that there's a lot of discussions going on. I'm smack in the middle of a lot of them to try to deal with these issues. One was making sure that there's better access to lenders who will service that, and to make sure that those resources do not in any way run out as the fear is right now that they will. So these are ongoing talks, ongoing negotiations, ongoing conversations with lending institutions. Some of those problems are being solved, like Wells Fargo had been telling people they hit their cap because of restrictions that were placed upon them. Those were released. I know that some of those details will be talked about in this call, but I want you to know that I'm very much aware of that, something that I'm working on. The relief package also includes SBA emergency grants for nonprofits and small businesses through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and nonprofit employers whose operations have been fully or partially suspended are eligible also for the worker retention tax credit for a percentage of their wages and compensation paid to eligible employees during this crisis. There's a lot of programs out there, and I know it can seem a bit complex, and I know that you all have a lot of questions, and that's why was a lot of the reasons why we wanted to pull together this call and begin to get as much information out there as possible. On this call, we have some great partners that have been really just great for us to work with, like Al. He's on. He has been so solid from the SBA. Elizabeth and John from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, just really, really solid servants of our state. I want to thank them for taking time to walk everyone through these programs. They and their entire teams, and I should thank my team who's on this call as well. We all know the urgent tasks that we have before us, and our teams are sort of all hands on deck going at this. And so I just want to just say, as I prepare to sign off and let the call continue, that my office is at your behest. I came up through nonprofit communities, whether it was legal clinics or my first jobs before I got into elected office were in the nonprofit world doing work here in Newark, New Jersey, where I'm talking to you from. This is truly very personal for me because I've gotten to know so many of you from north to south in the state. And I have a lot of the same fear, but what I know about fear is you cannot have great courage without great challenge and often great fear. And I know that you all are people who every single day look at great challenges and don't blink. When my first job in a nonprofit in Newark, New Jersey, was working with this incredible tenant leader and whose son was murdered in the building, I would eventually move into this high-rise project. And I'll never forget when I asked her about her son being murdered, why she still did what she did. She looked at me with pride and she said, "I'm still here, still fighting because I'm in charge of Homeland Security." And I laughed, realizing that she had no presidential appointment, she had no title, but she, like so many of you, had that grit and that courage and that toughness to stare wretchedness in the face and understand that in our lifetimes, hope is the active conviction that despair will never have the last word. And you all, through your actions every single day in the face of fear and worry and anxiety and despair, you all are living hope. You all are hope made manifest. And I'm going to do my best to fight every single day to get you the resources you need at a critical time to make sure that your light in this dark time can just keep shining and maybe and perhaps even shine brighter. So thank you, everybody. We will keep you in mind, and please continue to reach out to me and my team. And with that, Linda.
Thank you so much for your leadership, for everything that you are doing to fight for New Jersey, for nonprofits. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Linda. All good.
I hear you now, Linda.
Perfect. I was a little concerned there. Wonderful. Senator, thank you again for your leadership, for nonprofits, for the state of New Jersey, for fighting for us every day, and for this really important update and your inspiring words at this very critical time. We're standing ready to work with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Booker's team have also put together a comprehensive guide of COVID-19 information and assistance, and this can be, thank you, Senator. This can be downloaded from the Senator's website, and we will send all of the links to all of the resources that that are mentioned during this call, as well as the slides and everything else afterward in a follow-up email. Before we move on, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. In terms of the order for the rest of the day, the rest of the afternoon, you will first be hearing from Alfred Titone, New Jersey District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration, and then Elizabeth Limbrick and John Costello from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority will be speaking next. To ensure that our speakers can get to all of the planned information, we're going to invite them to each go through their full presentations, and then we'll address Q&A after the presentations are finished as we are able. As you can appreciate, the information and the situation is changing rapidly, and we will get to as much as we can. We will share what we collectively, what we know, what we don't know, and we will follow up to the best extent possible. If you have questions, a number of you submitted questions ahead of time, and we have those as well. And if you have additional questions that you would like to submit while people are speaking, use the chat box and we will get to them as we are able. In the interest of efficiency, all of the slides have been provided to me ahead of time, so I will be advancing them when the speakers say, and will be moderating the questions. With that, I do believe we can now turn things over first to Alfred Titone, and we, again, are so grateful to you for being here today, for the U.S. Small Business Administration and all of the programs that you're making available. We know the road has been a little bit rocky, and we know that the guidance has been changing rapidly, but we do appreciate everything that you are doing to provide the assistance to the community as quickly as you can. So let me pause there and turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Governor Caitlin, for putting this together. I appreciate the invite. So just so folks know, I'm going to go through the two major programs that is being offered by or through SBA. As far as participation, so I'm going to get into this right before I even start, of nonprofits and faith-based. They are allowed to participate in the programs. There's some pretty significant guidance that you'll get in the email. There's just too much for me to go through online, but I'm going to give you what the basic programs are, and then we'll go from there. Next slide. So this is normally SBA does loan programs like this, where we go through a lender and they're offered a certain guarantee. You can find a lender, at least theoretically, through this link. I've been told something. Okay, so let me stop. Something folks need to understand is just because folks are eligible to do the payroll protection program does not mean that they're going to do it. And I think that's one of the things the Senator was alluding to, is trying to get a little bit more involvement as we are going into what will hopefully be the next phase of this. The whole idea of this is to keep folks on their feet, is to keep businesses going, keep businesses payroll going. So number one, the economy doesn't entirely collapse and businesses at least have a shot at surviving. The funds can be used for up to 8 weeks of payroll costs, and that includes benefits. So there's a frequently asked question on this on the Treasury site, but benefits include, health care, paid leave, that kind of thing. So it does include that when you're talking about the 8 weeks of payroll costs. You can also use for interest on mortgage and utilities, but the part that can be forgiven is all the stuff that's related to payroll, which we'll touch in a minute. It's open now, and it's open now for folks that are sole proprietors and independent contractors. Next slide. Loan amount is $10 million, at least as of right now. Interest rate is 1%. Some of you may have heard how it was a 0.5% earlier on. It was changed to 1% just to try to get more lender input and participation, because really the lenders are not making a lot of money on these loans, but we're hoping that they'll still participate. Your first payment is going to be deferred for 6 months. The loan will mature in 2 years. There's no collateral requirements, there's no personal guarantees, there's no lender fees payable to SBA, and it's available through June 30th. Now, I want you to press these two things: the personal guarantees, there's no lender fees. There's a lot of scams out there. I've been warning everybody about this. Please, please, please be careful what you're applying for. The SBA does not charge you to apply. The SBA does not charge you to find the lender. If you want to hire somebody to do it and they charge you, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you go to a site and they're pretending that they're us and they're telling you got to pay a fee, you are at the wrong site. SBA and Treasury both have .gov in their address, so please keep that in mind. It's SBA.gov. It's not .com, not .net, .gov. Okay, next. At least 75% of the funds you get must be used on payroll and payroll-related functions, as I mentioned earlier. Forgiveness, basically you have to maintain or rehire employees at the salary level. So, for instance, you have 10 employees, you rehire them. The total payroll for the 10 employees previously was, for argument's sake, let's say, because I'm not good at the mental math, so let's say $200,000. You rehire the 10 employees at $100,000. Well, you're not going to get forgiven for that loan. The whole idea here is maintaining your salary and maintaining folks' ability to live. Who's eligible? All small business with 500 or fewer employees, nonprofits, vets organizations, faith-based organizations, what you read here, sole proprietors, self-employed persons, independent contractors. You see the asterisk next to 500. So there are certain companies and certain NAICS and NAICS, don't ask me what it stands for, but that's all businesses have classifications. There are some organizations that you can have more than 500 employees. So if you have more than 500 employees and you're in one of those NAICS codes, you could still possibly qualify for the loan. Next slide, please. Okay, so you're going to owe money if the loan amount for anything used is more than the 75%. If you use it for other than payroll costs, mortgage, interest, rent, and utility payments over the 8 weeks receiving the loan, the 75%. So when we talk about the 75% to 25% can be used for the rent, the utility payments, that kind of thing. You have to maintain staff and payroll at the level of before February 15th. If it's less than that, you're going to owe money. So for loan forgiveness, full-time employee headcount stays the same. Salaries and wages must be maintained, and you have till June 30th, 2020 to restore full-time employment and salary levels from any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. Next slide. Okay, I kind of went over this before. All these are payroll costs. So as you can see, there's a lot in the counts under payroll costs. And for sole proprietors and independent contractors, the wages, your commissions, your income, or net earnings from self-employment, these all count as payroll costs. So these are all applicable to the 75 questions. Later, let's go to the EIDL program. Next slide. This declaration was kind of a weird one for the East Coast, and actually for a large part the eastern part of the country. This was not initially a nationally declared disaster, so each governor had to ask the SBA to make the declaration, which New Jersey did. Actually, New Jersey did a lot of heavy lifting to get it in when they did. We were among the first in this part of the country to get the designation. Unfortunately, shortly after they were approved, they made it a lot easier, but I give credit to the EDA, because New Jersey EDA and not EDA, well, they did a great job of putting it together. So you have a year deferment on economic injury disaster loans provided for COVID-19. If you currently have an SBA loan of any kind, you can get a 6-month deferment on any of those loans. So if you're a business and you have a 7A, a 504, or even a microloan, you get a deferment. Next slide. So these are the businesses that are eligible for it. And pretty much everyone on this call should be eligible for it. Next slide. That is so, and let me tell you what the reason for that is. Every disaster is independent. So you can borrow up to $2 million, but you cannot combine disaster loans. So if you were still paying off a disaster loan from Superstorm Sandy, let's say, and you want to take out one of these and you want to combine them, you can't do that. And the reason for that is under SBA's normal rules, whatever loans you take out are cumulative up to the limit. So for most organizations, our regular loans is $5 million. You could take out, 2 loans for $2,500,000. With the injury and the disaster loans, it's $2 million per event. So you can have as many $2 million loans as you can afford. Obviously, not everybody's getting $2 million. But for this loan, you qualify for up to $2 million. Interest rate for profits are 3 3/4. Nonprofits is 2 3/4. Again, the working capital loans will be based on your size, and same as for nonprofits. These can be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, other bills, etc. They're not intended, and neither this nor the PPP are intended to replace lost sales or profits or for expansion. Let me say that again. That's a big question we get. Your proposed profit is not covered by either the EIDL loan or the disaster loan, same thing, or the PPP loan. Okay, you can't use the monies for that purpose. Now, what the other point of confusion is, it says here you can use it for payroll, pretty much similar things that with the PPP. So here's the thing to remember. You can apply for both, you can get both, but whichever one, so if you, let's say you get the disaster loan first, you use it for payroll, then you get approved for the PPP loan. What you can do is you can use that loan in essence to pay off the EIDL loan so that you're not using the same amount, or it will get reduced by the amount of your EIDL loan, either way. You cannot do what we call double dipping in the federal government from the same pot. You can't use the same 2 different pots of money for the same thing. Next slide. So this is what they told us right up front. We recently found out, well, actually what they told us right up front is you were going to get $10,000. This is actually correct. You can get an advance of up to $10,000 immediately. What does that mean? For the most part, it will mean $1,000 per employee up to 10 employees. So if you were a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, it would be 1 employee and you would get $1,000. When you're going through the EIDL loan, and I'm going to touch on this again and something else in a second. As you're going through it, it's going to ask you if you want the advance. Not too many people don't do this, but so you would check yes. They would ask for your banking and your routing information, and then the money will come. If you did an early disaster loan, and again, just EIDL, disaster, economic injury, we're talking about the same loan. It's all this loan, the disaster loan. If you did an early loan and you did not have that question asked of you, that means that you need to reapply. Keep your number, it doesn't change your status. It's just if you want to get the advance, you need to reapply for a new loan. But you don't lose your place. The first loan is still eligible. Loan's still valid. Yeah, anybody who's eligible to apply who has economic injury disaster, anybody can apply. Next slide. to pay anything that the regular idle loan can be. The only difference in the advance is that it doesn't have to be paid back. So we don't use the G word at SBA because we don't really do grants for small business. We consider this a forgivable advance, but in essence, it's the same thing. Next slide. Okay, so this is one of those instances I told you before with the other loan. Most of our loans go through a lending institution, a bank or non-bank lender. This is actually the only program that the loans come directly from Treasury through SBA to the borrower. So that's the biggest single difference. You don't have to go to a bank to apply like you do with the PPP or all our other loans. You go right to the website you see here, and it'll bring you to the new program. Collateral is going to be required for loans over $25,000, but there's no obligation to take the loan if it's offered. The difference in this as opposed to traditional one is no real estate collateral is going to be asked for. Blanket, this is basically a lien against all your regular business collateral will be used, but it's not going to go against your personal real estate. Personal guarantees will be required for loans over $200,000. Again, that's a big jump. Normally with the disaster loan, it's over $25,000. You can have an existing disaster loan and still qualify for this, but as I stated earlier, you cannot combine them. So you would have payments for the two different loans. Next slide. Not eligible, agricultural, usually because there's other sources of assistance for them, mostly through the USDA. If you're involved in an illegal activity at the federal level, i.e. if you're cannabis or marijuana, you will not get a loan because at the federal level that is still illegal. Obviously, if you're gambling, if you run an adult store, something like that, basically you're not going to qualify for this. And if more than 1/3 of your annual gross is from legal gambling activities, you will not qualify. Next slide. Okay, how to apply? Right there. There's this link for it. You can also send an email if you want to do paper. I would not do paper if I were you. It will take a very long time. But if you want to, it's there and there's the address for it. I'm going to go next slide. You can get help with putting your financial records, et cetera, together from a number of our partners, the Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, our Women's Business Centers, and Business Outreach Centers. The SCORE offices are probably not going to be help much with the loan application itself, but they're excellent in helping you get your financial records together, preparing for it, et cetera. And I'm sure we'll hear from New Jersey, but New Jersey also has some folks that are helping with the SBA loan, especially the PPP, helping folks put it together. And we appreciate that assistance because it's a lot of small businesses here in Jersey, and we appreciate all the help we can get from our local partners. I'm your nearest office, so you can get us at sba.gov/NJ. And you can, on that site, you can either go to americassbdc.org to find the small business centers, or you can look it up on the resource guide that is linked on our webpage. Next slide. Okay, I'm only going to go, there's a bunch of these, I'm only going to go a few of them. So when you click on that application form, this is what you're going to see. Okay, so next slide, please. This is really important. This is where people kind of mess up. Make sure you click the right thing. For most of you, that will be the last bullet, dot, radio button, whatever you want to call it at the bottom. Really important you collect the correct thing. Thank you, because that is going to determine the rest of the application. Next page. Okay, so this is kind of a checklist. This basically, if you can't check all of these, you can't apply for the loan. Okay, so you want to make sure that all of these are checked and that you're legitimately checking them. Next page. Okay, here you just put in your business information in, etc. You would put down, I see at the bottom for you folks, applicant a nonprofit organization, you would say yes, and then you would get asked different questions. Next page. Again, are you a franchise, yes or no? And then you fill out the information. Next page. Okay, again, this is all pretty self-explanatory. Next slide. Again, make sure you put out in all the information. Next slide. Okay, so this is where it may get a little tricky, especially I know a lot of nonprofits have subsidiaries or they are a subsidiary, so it'll get tricky. But if you're owned by another business entity, you would say yes or no and then follow the instructions. Next page. Okay, if you have more than one owner agency, this is really, I'm going to stop here because this stuff is really geared more for sole proprietor and for profits. It's different questions for the nonprofits, but the bottom line is this is a really quick and easy application. I actually, when they first came out with this one, I went on, I did it, I made up my own like sole proprietorship. I didn't go through the whole thing. No, I didn't take the money, but I can tell you I got through the whole thing in about 8 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to end it there and we can move on and then I'll take questions later.
Thank you very much. There was so much to cover there, and we really appreciate your going through all of this so quickly. And again, we'll come back to you with more questions. Right now, I am turning things over to our friends at the Economic Development Authority, Elizabeth Limbrick and John Costello. We have slides that were sent to us, so we'll go through them with you as well. So whenever you're ready, you can say, you can tell me to advance those slides and we will do that as well. But let me turn things over to Elizabeth first. Thank you so much for being with us today. And hello, John, too.
Absolutely.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Center for Nonprofits. Thank you to Senator Booker for inviting us to join you today. Partnerships like this are so valuable, and we really appreciate this opportunity to be working with you. Just some general comments that first and foremost, we recognize this is really a public health crisis, but right behind that is this economic crisis. And we also recognize that economic well-being is really intertwined in so many ways with the quality of life and people's just overall health. So we recognize the importance of this.
Labor and taxation, one of the senior partners in the firm has to have at least a minimum credit score of 600, and then you have to be able to show some negative impact from COVID-19 crisis, which I think everybody here already has. There will be some additional conditions on this and some debarment questions, but please, once again, I can't recommend this enough. We have a portal, cv.business.nj.gov, which will have information on our loan products, on the rest of the EDA's products, as well as a FAQ guide where we work with our partners in government to help provide solutions for New Jersey small businesses. cv.business.nj.gov. And last but not least, this portal is also staffed with experts from the EDA, Business Action Center, and our other partner agencies from 8 in the morning until 9 at night, 7 days a week. So I'm going to hand this back over to Liz to go forward from here.
Thanks, John. And yeah, just to reiterate what John said, April 13th, which I think is actually Monday at 9 a.m. is when this one opens. And that same website, if you go there now, the cv.business.nj.gov, you can find a PDF of the application so you can get your stuff together now. We highly recommend that you get in touch with your accounting team, get everything that you're going to need. So you need to really think about what you're asking for. So for instance, if you're asking for money for rent, then you need to show us your lease. So get all that kind of stuff together. And you need to have a complete application. So just, if you go on and you just answer the questions and you're not uploading all the supporting documentation, that's not going to put you first in line. The complete application with all the supporting documentation is the one who's going to be first in line. And it's a first come, first serve. So you want to get on, you want to get all your stuff together right now so that Monday morning, we do anticipate it's opening at 9 a.m. It hasn't been confirmed yet. I think they're going to confirm that today, that that's the date, but keep an eye on that website, and the information will be on there when it is ready to go. So the next slide, please. In addition to those great programs, and I do think that the one John just told you about is the one you'll probably be most interested in, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about these next couple of programs, but just so you know that they're out there and they will be able to hopefully support you. In addition to those programs that support you directly, we're also working with community development finance institutions, or CDFIs, to support micro businesses and nonprofits. We're providing them with money so they can loan out money to organizations like yourselves who need it. So this first program is called a First Loss Reserve Fund. It's $10 million, and it allows us at EDA to take a first loss position on loans that these CDFIs are providing at low interest rates to provide that working capital to you folks. So it's going to allow CDFIs to withstand loan defaults due to this outbreak, which will then, again, in turn allow them to provide more loans at lower interest rates to micro businesses and nonprofits that are affected by the outbreak. Next slide. For the slightly larger businesses and nonprofits, we have the Emergency Assistance Guarantee, which is a $10 million program that will provide 50% guarantees on working capitals, and it will also waive fees on loans made through institutions that are participating in the EDA's existing Premier Lender or Premier CDFI programs. And if you want to know who those are, you can go on our website and see who those Premier Lenders and Premier CDFIs are. We have strong relationships with these institutions. We've been working with them for years, and we're just taking the same principles and applying it to this. This is going to free up capital, again, for mid-sized businesses and nonprofits that need resources to get through this short-term downturn, but will be able to recover in the long run. Next slide. This is our New Jersey Entrepreneur Support Program. So this is for early stage startup companies, which often can have difficulty accessing traditional bank financing, and of course right now probably even more so. So if you're aware of anyone who might want to pursue a startup, we have this program. This is $5 million program to encourage continued capital flows to new companies and temporarily support that shaky market by providing an 80% loan guarantee for working capital to entrepreneurs. So just so you're aware of that, if you know somebody who's thinking about launching their business now. Next slide. So we mentioned this. I think this is really important, and I really want to emphasize this, and I hope you guys all, if there's anything else you take away from this, I hope it's this. We want to make sure that organizations that maybe haven't done this kind of stuff before, might have difficulty doing this, are able to access the resources we've been talking about, including those federal programs as well as the state programs. Depending on what program you're applying for, the application may be intimidating, may be a little complex. So we're launching this support program that will provide technical assistance to New Jersey-based nonprofits and other organizations that are applying for assistance either from us or from the federal government. One thing I really want to stress on this is that this program is open to all New Jersey organizations. In line with our commitment to building a stronger and fairer economy, we are already working with a variety of partners who have been supporting minority and veteran-owned companies to ensure that historically disadvantaged communities have access to these resources, and they're listed here on this slide. But anyone, whether you're a member or not a member, you are welcome to reach out to them. This is free technical assistance, helping you put together your financials, helping you put together your application package. So I've listed them here. It's the African American Chamber of Commerce, Rising Tide Capital, the New Jersey State Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. Next slide, please. So finally, in addition to all these new programs, we're also increasing the flexibility for participants in our existing NJEDA loan programs to ensure to enable short-term deferral of payments for companies experiencing COVID-related hardships. So if you have an existing loan with us or through one of our premier lenders, just reach out to your servicing officer. There's a variety of things that we can offer. We can offer certain payment moratorium on direct loans and premier lender participation loans. Of course, that's pending the approval by that agency bank. We are also allowing collateral releases, things we've never done before, subordination, substitutions on assets, and we're waiving late fees on loan repayments and loan modifications for COVID-impacted organizations. Next slide. This is a chart to help you understand what you might be eligible for. So with all these new programs, we understand it might be confusing, but this gives you sort of that simple rundown. But there's two things on this slide I want you to take notice of at the bottom. cv.business.nj.gov. Go there for more specific information. And then we also have on this slide the customer service number, so you can reach out to that number as well. Next slide. We also have this online eligibility wizard to help you determine which programs your organization can actually benefit from. We say this is like a BuzzFeed quiz for our programs, and it also includes some of the federal programs as well. You just answer 25 very simple questions, and then it tells you which resources are available to you. And one additional note I want to make is that the NJEDA programs are designed to complement the federal programs. You can use the EDA programs with both of the other federal programs, the EIDL and the tax credit, as long as you, again, are not double dipping for the exact same expense. And the same thing applies with our own programs. You can apply for both our grant and loan if you qualify. And I think, next slide. That pretty much wraps things up. All the information we went over, along with all the resources that can address much more specific questions, are available online. Here are some of the key resources to check. We've got the Business Information Hub. You can find our applications here. It's all this one-stop shop. We can't say it enough. It's a really great resource. cv.business.nj.gov. In fact, I think other states, I heard today, I think like 4 other states have actually reached out to us to see how we put this together because they were so impressed with it that they want to do it for their states. This is the most up-to-date information. It's updated many times throughout the day, and the information is searchable. John mentioned we have that great chat feature, so it's staffed with people from our organization as well as the Business Action Center. It's staffed from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week. Again, we have this assistance eligibility wizard that I mentioned. And I also just want to point out that if you are hiring, which some essential industries are hiring right now, we have one additional resource that we want you to know about, which is the COVID-19 jobs portal, which we stood up in partnership with the Department of Labor. And it's a central location for businesses to post job openings and connect with workers who may have lost their jobs or had their hours reduced in response to this outbreak, and that they're now looking for work. I believe we have about 50,000 jobs already posted there. And the website for that, I believe, is listed right there on that slide. So again, this is immediate actionable hiring information. We recognize the more people we can keep connected with a paycheck, the better. This is really important. I also want to just mention that if, all these programs that we just went through, these are all special new programs that we're standing up. But if for whatever reason these don't fit your needs, you can still look at our traditional programs. We have not shut the door on the traditional business that we do. We still have our core programs, and there's still opportunity out there. Again, we get it that we're all facing this incredible challenge, and there is going to be more rolling out, especially as the federal government and Senator Booker continue to come through with their resources in the billions. We're going to keep standing up programs and trying to help you as much as we possibly can. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to, I think it's Linda. Yes?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, John. Thank you, Albert, for this incredible amount of information that you have given us in such a short amount of time. And we recognize that we are in uncharted territory in many, many ways. our three speakers have graciously agreed to stay for some extra time for Q&A. We know in the promotional materials we said this was going to end at 4:30, but we are really, really grateful to our presenters for allowing some extra time so that we can go through some Q&A. My colleague Caitlin Giles McCormick is behind the curtain and will hopefully help flag some of these questions. Many of you also submitted things ahead of time, and we know we can't possibly get to them all, but I'll tee a couple of things up, and I may jump around between questions for the EDA and questions for SBA. But let me stick with EDA and just wanted to reality check a couple of things. The closing window for getting your application in the queue for the emergency assistance grants, the grants that were announced last Friday. When does that window close?
When that window closes at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
9 a.m. tomorrow, so it's not full day. You have to get your application in ASAP. Okay.
Yeah. The nice thing is that it's a very quick application process. There's a lot of automation to it. A business owner with a current tax return should have the vast majority of the information that they need to fill that out. And then on the site itself, it has a couple excellent resources should you need to know something like your NAICS code, which is your industry code, things like that.
Great. This may actually be for all of you. We often get questions, or I remember seeing it firsthand. Sometimes the way these applications are structured, they're structured in a way that doesn't necessarily always apply to nonprofits. So for example, I'll talk about the PPP because I saw that personally until it was changed. It talks about owners, it talks about ownership stake, things like that don't apply to nonprofits. And it flagged something that you said earlier in the presentation for EDA. It's the issue of guarantors and nonprofit executives as guarantors, and that could be a real issue. So I wanted, since John and Elizabeth, you're on right now, wanted to ask if you could address that first, and then invite Albert if he could step in on the PPP side of things.
So as to the guarantor question, what we can do is, we do require some executives to sign off on the grant and loan applications. What I can do is we can get some more clarity as to the level of guarantors for C3s and C4s and C7s, and we can follow up on that question. But as it stands right now, there is a level of CEO of executive approval that's going to be needed for that. So, but we can get some clarity on that for you and fill that in for your members.
And I would also add, I'm looking at the PDF of the loan application as you asked this question, and we did think about nonprofits as we put it together. So we actually talk about, if you're a nonprofit, the kind of formation document that you would need to file and upload would be your certificate of incorporation, your bylaws, your certificate of authority for New Jersey, your amendments, or your IRS determination letter. So we actually listed out specifically for you. We broke it out. We said, we understand that some of you are nonprofits and that you're going to have different needs. So I would also recommend that you just take a look at the PDF of the loan application because it might just address that in there.
Wonderful, thank you. Albert, are you on the line? Can you talk a little bit about the PPP stuff?
Sure. So you have to realize for SBA, other than disaster, we've never lent to nonprofits. It was actually how the legislation that formed the SBA was written. So that's part of the issue, I'm sure. Going through the disaster loan, if you had checked the not-for-profit, I'm sure the questions would be different. I'm actually curious now, so I'll probably do that tonight or tomorrow just to see what they look like. Going through further on the PPP loan, I'm sure as they do more adjusting, folks need to remember the PPP loan is literally 5 days old. Okay, so it's not perfect and the process is not perfect. And, so we're working on it, and I'm sure that things are being considered, but, hopefully those things will be worked out, and I will make sure that I send a note down. Whether they listen to the district director of New Jersey, I don't know, but I'll certainly send a message down about those the guarantor type stuff for the nonprofits.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Another question that has come up in various forms. This particular one reads, we had to do a layoff. We have now applied for a PPP loan. Will this loan take me back to the day I bring my employees back from the layoff, or can it be used from the date of the, can it only be used from the date of the approval of the loan? So can you use your PPP money to back pay, I guess is what this is saying. And on a similar note, we had a question from somebody who asked if, in terms of the forgivability, if the let's say you lay somebody off on March 1st, you rehire them on April 1st, do you have to also provide your employees, your newly rehired employees, with back pay in order for the loan to be fully forgivable? So those are two related things.
And the answer to both is no. You can't use it for back pay. The idea is to use it from the time you get approved and 8 weeks going forward, which is why they say it's available until June 20th, if assuming the money holds out. You can't use it for back pay or for anything that's not payroll or business related. I know back pay would be, but you can't use it for that.
Okay, and for the forgivability piece, since you're paying this prospectively, if you rehire people and you keep them on the payroll from that point forward, then that will presumably allow the full loan to be forgivable.
Assuming you have the same amount or pretty close to the same amount of people and the same amount of money. There is a little bit of play there. They anticipate you wouldn't be able to get everybody back, but I forget what the percentage is, but you got to be pretty close.
Okay, great. Let's see. Many questions, so it's hard to choose sometimes. A couple of questions have come up in terms of, and I've seen this, I've seen you speak a lot about this during some of the presentations, and that is for, let's say, an organization that, let's say, works out of, has a home office that they're mostly volunteers. They don't. You talk about having a commercial structure. Can you address the issue of an organization that might not have a separate office or separate facility, and if
As
they're
long as you
eligible for
have an
anything?
address. Yeah, as long as you have an address, that's fine. I mean, that's why sole proprietors and independent contractors are eligible. So as long as you can prove, the expense and you have an address, that's fine. You just can't use a PO box. As long as there's an address, doesn't have to be an apartment building, doesn't have to be an official office, doesn't have to be any of that.
Yep. And on the New Jersey side, we're actually the opposite of that. We are requiring a physical commercial address.
Do you anticipate any programs being made available to for EDA for organizations that don't have a separate commercial address?
I'm not aware of anything in the works currently, but I don't know what might be coming down the pike in the future. I don't know if John has any comments on that.
Yeah. To echo Elizabeth's comments, I don't know of anything that's coming down the pike, but to kind of echo what the governor's been saying, what our leadership team has been saying, the real motivation here is to stabilize New Jersey nonprofits, to stabilize New Jersey businesses, and to stabilize New Jersey employment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, back to PPP and some of the and there's been reference made on this call as far as some of the hiccups in rollout. Again, recognizing the sheer scale of this and the speed with which the rollout has been attempted. This is monumental stuff, and we certainly understand that. That said, assuming that more funds will be made available for the program, I mean, there is right now a lot of concern on the part of nonprofits, and the senator alluded to it. I'm sure you've heard this in terms of the availability or access of nonprofits to some of these programs, either in the early days being told that lenders would not every lender was participating, certainly, or lenders that would only write for borrowers with whom they had a lending relationship, or all sorts of things like that. So the question is, do you have any updates as far as how that's being addressed? Number one. Number two, if a nonprofit's typical, if my bank is not participating in the program, how do you find somebody who is? How can that be opened up a little bit more, so that some of those obstacles can be addressed? And this is all
So
around
it was in the slides, there was an address you can go to look for a lender, but those are SBA approved lenders. Now, whether they include the newly approved lenders, I don't know. And that link seems to be a little iffy over the last day or two. I think it's just being used so much, it's just getting loaded down. But we are constantly onboarding. Every day we're onboarding more and more as we streamline the process, and basically, the kinks have gotten worked out. So we expect to have more lenders on board. If your lender is not doing it, hopefully you'll be able to search for lenders that are. We're trying to put a list together. I'm going to be really honest with you. Everybody in the state that is doing it has got literally queues of thousands of loans already, from what I'm told. So it's not going to be easy, but the other side of it is they can put these through pretty quickly once they're complete. So we're kind of hoping over the next few days, a number of them have told us that they'll actually be working through the weekend, which they can with our systems. Some of that backlog will clear up, and we'll get a little bit more daylight for businesses to apply.
And relatedly, and you may not have an answer to this, but maybe in your experience you've just seen, do you have any sense as far as what is a reasonable time frame to expect between when you get your PPP application in and when you might hear back from your lender?
Okay, so I'm going to give you what we're told. We're told it's going to be within a week or two. It might be realistic. I mean, because this is new. It's an entirely streamlined. They're calling it under the 7A program, but the 7A program has a lot more hoops that you got to leap through. But we're told it's going through quickly, and by SBA terms, quickly would be a couple of weeks. So I don't quote me on that. That's strictly a guess by Altitone, but I think it'll be reasonable once a completed application, and that's the key here, once a completed application has been submitted in. If your application is lacking, if you or your lender missed something, obviously that doesn't matter. You lose your place in line. So if you miss up on the application, which is why what our partners from EDA was saying, it's the same thing for SBA. Be complete, take a look at the application, download it, make sure you have everything in there so that when you put it into the bank, because remember, they're doing thousands of these. So they're not going to be able to go over with a fine-tooth comb all your stuff. It's on you. It's on you to make sure you have the right designation for yourself, and it's on you to make sure everything's included. They'll do a cursory check, but it's going to be on you. So just make sure it's all there.
Okay, that is a very important and helpful reminder. I think you kind of at least touched on this, but a few questions regarding faith-based organizations, either houses of worship or faith-based CDCs, community development corporations, or can you just review again the eligibility, which programs faith-based organizations might be eligible for, either on the SBA side or on the New Jersey side?
Well, I'll start there. They're both programs they can apply for as long as they meet the size standards for small business.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're a house of worship or a CDC.
Not that I can tell.
Okay. And how about New Jersey?
I believe it's the same with us. We do actually ask the question on our applications about whether or not you are religiously affiliated. And we note that if you are, we may need to do some follow-up questions during the loan underwriting process. So I don't know, John, if you have any more insight than that.
No, you hit the nail on the head there. We will be asking questions if you for faith-based organizations they are still eligible to receive both grant and loans under this. Remember, our big thing, our big motivating factor here, coming from the governor, coming from our leadership team, coming from everybody, is that we want to preserve New Jersey nonprofits, we want to preserve New Jersey small businesses, and we want to preserve New Jersey jobs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, just to confirm, because I know that this was a point, and this is for you, Al, this was a point of contention when the CARES Act was being debated, but just to confirm, Medicaid funded programs are eligible to apply for the Payroll Protection Program, correct?
I have no idea. I can double
Okay.
check for you, but I really don't know.
Okay, my understanding, and again, I can't be quoted either, but from the National Council of Nonprofits and other advocates have reported in prior summaries of the CARES Act that while an earlier draft was going to make ineligible organizations that provided Medicaid-funded programs, that was taken out of the final bill, so that should not be a barrier. But that is something that we can, if you can follow up on it and verify it, that would be awesome, and we
Sure.
will.
Honestly, the senator's office would probably know better than me, but I'll send the question down. But you might get a quick answer from him, but I'll send it down.
Sure. Okay, this is another one that's a big concern. A number of organizations, as you know, provide services to undocumented people. And so is there an issue? I mean, some of this has to do with actual services available to individuals, which is a little bit beyond the scope of this call, but certainly of interest, I know, to the senator. But is there, in terms of services to, or does the fact that the constituency is undocumented affect the eligibility of the organization to provide, to apply for assistance?
So at the federal level, as long as the organization, the owner, the folks that are involved in the nonprofit or the faith-based organization, as long as they are either citizens, green card, as long as they are here legally and the business is a legal business in the state, there shouldn't be an issue. They cannot count undocumented employee salaries. They cannot count that for the PPP loan. So the employees have to be here legally, as do the owners of the business. What they do is an entirely different thing, as far as I know.
Anything to add on the EDA side?
On the EDA side, what we're looking for is to make sure that the business and the nonprofit has the proper formation documentation for the state of New Jersey, that they have a physical presence in the state of New Jersey, that they're up to date with their filings with the Department of Labor, that they're up to date with their filings with the Department of Taxation, and that's what we're going to be looking for.
So on the I'm sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth.
We have a few things that aren't allowed, but I don't think any of the nonprofits on here would fit into those, like sin businesses.
Yeah.
You know, gambling, obscene kinds of things like that. Christmas tree sales or other outdoor storage or any activity that is constituting a nuisance or illegal purposes. So I don't anticipate anybody on this call is involved in those kinds of businesses that are excluded.
Okay, I am mindful of the clock, and it is 4:53 by my clock anyway. There are certainly many more questions that then we have time to answer. I'm going to transition to a couple of closing remarks, but to thank the three of you first for your time, your expertise, and everything that you are doing day in, day out. Again, it is a monumental challenge that everyone is facing, and we're all trying to get there together. So thank you for everything that you are doing. And you look forward to receiving more information, to working with you, and so that we can provide or see that meaningful relief is provided to nonprofits and the people that they serve. Let me just go on a couple of things quickly before closing up here. Just as a reminder, advocacy as we move forward, as you know, this is a very fluid situation, both on the federal and state level. So continued advocacy, raising your voices, making sure that Senator Booker, Senator Menendez, your congressional representatives, Governor Murphy, and all legislative leadership and legislators in Trenton are hearing from you, staying in touch with our partners in the executive branch and NJEDA. All of this is going to be critically important, and the Center for Nonprofits is working on a number of initiatives, partnering with a lot of players to try to make sure that nonprofits are protected and accounted for in the legislation and the policies that come down the pike. But your voice matters, so please make sure that you're continuing to be in touch with your own representatives and with us so that we can advocate for you and with you effectively. By way of a reminder, Senator Booker's guide to the resources on COVID-19 is available on their website, and we'll also send a PDF of that out to everybody on this call or everybody who's registered in addition to other materials. Just by way of a reminder, the main state of New Jersey hub, in addition to the business hubs that you were told about earlier, make sure you visit this page frequently. It's the most up-to-date information about this from the state, and it also links to a lot of the other resources that have been discussed on this call. The Center for Nonprofits also has a COVID-19 resource page. It is nonprofit specific or nonprofit centric, and we include information, links to all sorts of resources, some of the private sector relief funds, what philanthropy is doing, links to other guides and how-tos and other kinds of funds and management information and a whole lot more. So please visit that page often. My colleague Caitlin Giles McCormick updates this probably multiple times a day, so make sure you've got that bookmarked. We certainly invite you to follow us and connect with us on social media, join our email list. All of these channels are ways by which we stay in touch and can communicate what we're learning. Again, the information is so fluid, it's changing rapidly. So we certainly encourage you to connect with us and stay in touch. Tell us what you're hearing. I mentioned our survey earlier, and we have done 2 rapid response surveys to take a pulse of how this crisis is affecting the nonprofit community. We have done 2, we will be doing more periodically, and we thank all of you who have completed these surveys and encourage you to keep your eyes out and take a couple of minutes when these come out, because this helps us advocate. This is vital information for our policymakers and our friends in philanthropy to hear. If you haven't done so yet, fill out your census. Make sure your family members, your clients, everybody in your networks fills out the census. If you want to get more resources into New Jersey, this is the most important way to do that. What we do now affects what New Jersey gets over the next 10 years. We have historically been undercounted and therefore underfunded. So it's another plea to make sure that you fill out your census and make sure that others that you know fill it out as well. Finally, let me thank Senator Booker, Caitlin McGinnis from Senator Booker's office, Al Tatone from the Small Business Administration, Elizabeth and John from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, my colleagues at the Center for Nonprofits, and all of you. We know how difficult these times are. We're a nonprofit ourselves. We are living this as well. And we get through this by working together and staying in touch and supporting each other. So thank you again for taking the time. We will follow up and continuously put out whatever information we can find so that we can all get through this together. Thank you for spending the time with us, and we look forward to staying in touch.